and welcome to our virtual summit, Generative AI and the Path Forward. Hello, my name is Emily Jarvis, and I'm the Senior Manager for Events here at GovLoop. And today I have the added pleasure of also being your host. So thanks so much for joining me. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention all of our partners. So today, representing our partners are Box, Carasoft, ServiceNow, SHI, Dell Technology, and Data Robot. So thank you to them so much for putting on today's summit. So let's get to it, because agencies are currently undergoing a massive shift as they adapt to the new administration. From personnel changes to policy redirection, there are a multitude of things on the move. But one thing is crystal clear, and that is that there is a lot of work to be done and fewer people to do it, which means technology needs to play a critical role. And one of the key technologies is, of course, generative AI. And so today, our experts are going to discuss how agencies are realizing the power of AI and the governance, security, ethical, and responsibility considerations they are making to ensure it's being used properly. But before we get to all of that good stuff, I've got some housekeeping items to go over with you all. First things first, we've got some great resources available for you to download under the resources section on the console today. Of course, if you need the closed captioning feature, you can find that under the show captions icon along the bottom right-hand panel. We, of course, hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but they can and do happen. And if they do, send us a message to that Q&A tab, and one of my colleagues will get you all sorted out. You can use that same tab to submit questions to our speakers, and we want your questions. Don't be shy. Put your questions in early and often. You can chat with your fellow Govies using that chat feature along the bottom panel as well. And finally, I promise this is the last of the housekeeping. We are recording this training, so check your inboxes tomorrow, because we'll email you a link so you can watch the entire session on demand as well. All right, with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let's get the content started. And to kick things off, my colleague Candace Thorson sat down with Keegan Mills, who's the engineering, IT, and cyber lead for the Marine Corps Systems Command, to talk about all things AI. Here is that conversation.
Here to talk to us about how you can bring AI to your agency is Keegan Mills. He is Engineering, IT, and Cyber Tech Lead with Marine Corps Systems Command. So thanks so much for being here, Keegan.
Thanks for inviting me.
Lay the groundwork for me. How is your agency utilizing AI? And can you share a use case or an example?
I think we're using AI pretty much how the rest of the world is using AI, and then some. So the typical business use cases, what we're finding is it's really baked into a lot of the products and services that we're fielding now. So this is just the way of the world. It's part of modernization. So all of our software modernization it has to look at the AI component of what we're fielding.
Is there anything that, in your experience, it takes in particular to make AI programs a reality? Like, is there anything that's, that you
So
really have to consider?
yes, absolutely. And modernization in general is kind of like this. When you have a new technology or a new capability, and you're trying to integrate it into your legacy practices and procedures, things have to change, and you have to adapt what you do to take advantage of those tools. So where we're seeing the success is when we have projects and programs that have the latitude to reimagine business practices as well. And that's where you get the most benefit from bringing any new technology, but especially I think we're seeing that more with with especially generative AI and chatbots and those sorts of productivity enhancing tools, that we gain so much more when we change our way of doing things to match what the technology is capable of delivering.
So it's not just a question of, you do this process and suddenly you're just making it more manual. It's the idea that Gen AI can just totally refashion and reconfigure the whole, get how you get from A to B, just the entire proposition of it, not just like, doing the steps more manually, in other words.
Well, that's just it. And I think about earlier in my career when I was writing code, and how the thing that you did was you went and found examples of other people who had created something similar to what you were trying to do, and you adapted it, right? That was
Yeah.
a common practice, and now you don't have to do that. You just ask your chatbots to and explain what it is that you're trying to do, and you essentially you're starting from a much further place down the road than you used to have to start from, and that time savings, and adapting your process to account for that is how you make the big gains.
So it allows for a lot of creativity that you wouldn't necessarily have, in other words. And that's like, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, no, no. You hit on something there, the creativity part and the ability to run scenarios. So what if I did it this way? What if I did it that way? To do that manually in the past was just a bridge too far. Nobody did those kinds of things. Not to say nobody, but it was rare that we went down that road because it took so much time and so many resources to do. Those things are now infinitely more doable.
Yeah. And do they make it more fun, the whole process? Because I know a lot of people think that it's just generative AI in particular is sort of an enjoyable, at least right now, it's fun to try out. So does this, in your experience, does this make the process more interesting and enjoyable for people? Or this
Depends on the
the
people.
potential?
Me personally, I think so. I find the freedom that it gives for exploration to be empowering. Some people find it to be a vexing challenge, right? They don't like the wide open landscape. They like the way there's a way to do this, and we're going to do it that way. And uh, there might be other ways that we can explore now. So I think it just depends on a lot on personality.
Government, faces a lot of barriers. We talk about them all the time and different issues and stuff. But when it comes to AI in particular, what kind of struggles, obstacles, et cetera, do they face when they're looking to incorporate AI programs? Like what are the unique challenges that they might confront?
There's a couple of unique challenges, mostly around understanding what it is and what it does. So I think it's really the biggest challenge is figuring out how it fits into the broader program or project, and what's the advantage of having it? How do you use it? How does it make your project better? Those are probably the things that I would say are a unique challenge with AI that I haven't seen with other technologies that I've been exposed to in this job. But generally speaking, the act of bringing a new technology into the government as a practice is nothing new. It is something that has been done forever. We have tons of examples of that. What we tend to focus on though is the pace at which government moves to do big things. And what we don't take into account is that the system that we're dealing with is actually purpose built to design and designed not to make you jerk the steering wheel back and forth, right? The consistency is important. And what we tend to forget is that when there's a great need, when there is a common understanding, when there is unity of understanding of what we have to do and what the thing is that we're going to do to solve it, the problem and the solution, we can move faster than anyone. And we have
Mm,
plenty of examples in our past of those moments. Unfortunately, those moments tend to be bad. They tend to be things like Pearl Harbor or 9/11 or the Challenger disaster. Or just that
yeah.
those are the things that galvanize us, and those are the things that create that unity. And the real challenge is to rise to that occasion without having to experience that shared moment.
Yeah, those shared moments are just certainly not ones you want to repeat. It would be great to find another way to do it. But it sounds like you're saying, like, there are a lot of opportunities. Like I said, in a lot of people see Gen AI in particular as enjoyable, fun, sort of test driving what it can do and such. But I guess you're saying that part of the challenge is figuring out not just like how to test drive it to do one thing or another, but to actually integrate it into how your agency operates. So it's a streamlined process. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, and I think you've probably heard people talk about human machine teaming, and
Hmm.
this idea of we need decision advantage. That's one of the objectives that we're after, and there we have reached a moment in society where humans are truly incapable of being what we like to say fully informed. We don't have the ability to hold every piece of the equation in our heads and understand the relationships. And that is something that we need technology, we need AI to help us do. So while we can have access to a lot of information and a lot of moving parts, we're well past the point where a single human brain is able to hold all of those variables and understand their inner relationships and connections. We need this technology in order to make better decisions.
Oh, that's interesting. When people are going on their, their implementation journey and when it comes to AI, what kind of things can really go wrong? That they really,
Hmm.
really can do things poorly, particular pitfalls.
So I haven't actually seen truly terrible outcomes with AI and
Good.
technology. So I don't know that there is any greater danger in the misconfiguration, if you will. Now you can make the argument that the scale changes. AI enabled systems are able to do things at a much bigger scale than non AI enabled systems. So you run the potential of causing a much bigger problem if you have a problem. The converse to that is the solution is also a much bigger scaled solution. So it's kind of apples and apples. I don't necessarily.
Sure,
I think
that works.
it's not different. It's not worse. It's just different. I think.
What strategies, if I'm an agency and I see all the potential for AI out there, but I'm not quite sure what to do with it, what
Mhm.
strategies do you think people can use to bring AI more into their organization?
Well, you got to start with a problem. What are you trying to solve? Um, so what are you trying? One of the things I talked about just a little bit ago was this decision advantage problem. This is a problem. We need to figure out how to make better decisions because the level of complexity of the information that we have in order to make those decisions is vastly, um, I guess, vastly bigger than what our brains can handle. So there's a problem you need to solve. So that drives you to specific technologies, and AI being one of them. Different types of AI, machine learning being one of them, Gen AI being another one, to help
Hmm.
a human with that problem set. So I think if you really understand your problem and and you have a path to a solution, then you can communicate to all of the various stakeholders. And this is key in the government. This is where it falls doesn't fall apart. This is where people have a hard time understanding why the government is so slow to adopt things. It's really about creating the unity of understanding of what the problem is and what you're trying to solve. If you can do those two things and communicate that effectively, so that's three things: have the understanding of the problem, have the solution, and communicate it effectively, then we typically move those barriers out of the way, and things happen very very quickly.
That's a great way to put it because it is enticing. There's a lot of new technology out there. There are a lot of shiny objects you can jump after, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should because you need to make sure that you're solving a problem, not answering a question you don't have. I don't know if I said that right, but that sounded good. Um, so like AI has a human component. Like for instance, for me, I can't even talk, but AI has a human component. So how can you get your workforce and your office culture to get on board with an AI program? Because sometimes it
Uh,
can be a hard shift.
I would say where I'm sitting, I'm hearing the workforce clamor for it. They're they're demanding it from us to implement it. So people want the ability to draft the framework of a document by writing a prompt. That I don't have to do any convincing here. The people want it, and it really has just become the normal technology that we use on a daily basis to do all sorts of things.
Do you think that's partly because in our personal lives, we're doing that? I mean, I work with people who use ChatGPT to come up with recipes. So do you think that's part of it, that the personal has sort of made its way into the professional?
Yeah, and that's not new. That's a lot of the frustration that we've heard about, and I personally have experienced with IT in general in the government is that
Mm.
why can't I have my cell phone, that my one cell phone with my apps and everything works, and and there's reasons for that, but the personal or technology experience is slow to catch up in the government space, slower than it is in just general private industry. But you're absolutely right. The reason is all of this stuff has already permeated our daily lives, so everybody is familiar with and knows how to use it.
Right. In the next few years, what do you see, how do you see things evolving when it comes to AI in government? How do you see
Um,
that working?
it AI in government, so lots of different ways. I mean, obviously, we're using all different types of AI to do all kinds of different things. I think the more we migrate to commercial type solutions, especially for business problems, those capabilities are baked into the products and the solutions. So it's not a choice that we're going to make to include them. They come with them. They're inextricable, right? You can't have the human capital platform without the AI engine in the background, the data analytics, and the chatbot functionality. It's just there. So I don't think it's going to look vastly different than what it looks like for just the general population and the general business community and general life. I think we're going to actually merge into it a little bit quicker than we have other technologies because it's baked into everything that we're already currently that's currently in the pipeline that we're currently fielding.
Yeah. Now, if our attendees today only had like one or two takeaways from this conversation, what would you like them to walk away knowing?
I if they're here curious about the government aspect of this and the typical uh, conversation about government being slow, I think the what I'd like to take away is that that's changing, especially with the adoption of AI enabled commercial off the shelf technology. Uh, but B, the idea of our ability to move fast when the moment is right, and what it really takes to do that is sustained relationships with humans, and being able to have that shared moment, whether it's a crisis moment or just a shared understanding of what it is that we need to do, and have a clear, simple solution, and then things happen. So, and it really is about people. So, if I could say anything, it's that the people and the relationships are what makes all of this happen. It's
That's
just a
right.
lot,
You can't get away from the humans because
it's
humans use the IT to begin with. So yeah, that's
a
very
lot
true.
bigger
Thank
scale of the government than it is outside. That's it.
yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, Keegan. I appreciate you being here.
Me too. Thanks for the invitation.
In state and local governments, some of the most valuable data is not found in traditional databases. It's found in a wide variety of content generated in employees' day to day work. Case notes, court filings, Word documents, Excel files, drone footages, and maybe even PDF formats. There are examples of unstructured data everywhere, and information doesn't always fit into the rows and columns of a traditional database. So, how do you get the most out of this? My colleague John Monroe sat down with Box's Murtaza Masood and asked him how AI can make unstructured data more usable. Here is what he had to say.
From an AI perspective, as it relates to this unstructured content, I think where public service organizations are at the chasm of going from modernizing digital experiences to transforming digital experiences for both their residents, citizens, as well as their employees and workforce. And one key way of doing that with AI is to be able to extract structured data out of this unstructured content, regardless of the format. But there's a lot of hygiene and preparedness that has to go into that to unlock that value. But at the heart of it, AI now lets us look within these files and extract the meaningful insight and content to be able to drive intelligent automation and transform the way we perform work.
So I know, AI agencies, there's a learning curve here, kind of. So what do you see as some of the biggest barriers that agencies often face when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I'm just going back to my days in County of Los Angeles as the CIO. One of the ways was just making sure that we have digital content and digital files to work with. As I talk to many government CIOs, not just in the US, but from across the world, they are still grappling with what to do with the amount of paper that is either in offline or off-site storage, or just taking up square footage physically in these government facilities. So that's step one, is to make sure that you have a digital backbone and a digital platform of these files, of these documents to work off of. I think the second kind of phase of readiness is making sure that you're storing this content and managing this content in a robust platform that is A, open and accessible to your AI services, but B, provides a strong base and foundation for what I call content hygiene, right? That means there's no content proliferation. That means you're managing true copies, and you don't have redundant content versions and types across your ecosystem. And that also means you know where the single source of truth resides at any given time for a particular type of information.
I know another thing that agencies often struggle with, every organization struggles with, is they end up with these data silos, which just kind of makes it hard to collaborate. So what can be done to kind of reduce those silos and increase collaboration?
That's a topic close to my heart, as you can tell. Uh, you hit it on the head. As a CIO, you're faced with a digital ecosystem that may or may not be best at communicating with each other, at exchanging information, including these documents and these files with each other. And that's where I think step one in terms of unlocking the AI value comes in. Make sure that the interoperability is seamless, right? Both from a user experience perspective, but also content storage and content accessibility perspective, so that a file enters your government organization once, is stored once, but is consumed throughout the different facets and different applications and different interfaces. And our organization is kind of at the forefront of helping organizations achieve that.
And I guess on kind of a related note, we also have like workflows that all kind of work is based on. How can AI kind of help accelerate those workflows, accelerate content creation?
That really is built upon the foundations we just talked about. And the end result would be the consumption of that information, as well as the transformation of that workflow that you were just talking about, whether that's permit applications and reviews, whether that's unemployment insurance applications and eligibility applications reviews. The workflow really now gets powered by the insights, the structured data that is contained within these documents and files that can then fuel decision making, but also can fuel the type of workflows that should be triggered as soon as the content enters your organization or your process. I'll give you a key example that we were just talking about the other week with a client of ours. Something as simple as me requesting public records from their website. That should just be an end-to-end digital experience. But more importantly, AI can now enable them to extract key information, key metadata out of the documents that were submitted with that online submission, go ahead and kick off the workflows for the right employees, right analysts in the department to review that request. And more importantly, AI can now allow you to do natural language searches to look for information that satisfies that record request, right? And then automatically you'll be able to surface that through the web or through the mobile experiences back to the requester. Now that workflow in the traditional sense, and I speak from personal experience on this, used to take days just to understand what are the different data elements that would go into satisfying that public request. So collapsing that value chain, that activity chain of any public sector workflow or work process from days and weeks to hours or maybe a couple of days is really where the value of AI transformation in workflows comes from.
Thanks so much, Murtaza and John, for breaking down unstructured data and the connection to AI for all of us. We really appreciate it. As agencies explore a growing range of use cases for artificial intelligence, they face a looming challenge. Their existing IT operations, and while perhaps sufficient for traditional applications, they're not ready to meet the demands of a full-fledged AI initiative. But replacing a horse and buggy with a sports car won't pay off if you're still driving it on a dirt trail. So my colleague John Monroe sat down with Dell's Stephen Toomey to talk about how AI is augmenting the workforce and, more importantly, the way you work. So Stephen started off talking about how agencies are really moving forward with AI right now. Here's what he had to say.
My customers, specifically generally the smaller sub agencies, are really in an exploratory. They're really just looking at what can AI do today and how is it going to help their people. So specifically the internal, they all have a mandate to utilize AI, but they just don't understand what it's going to empower their individuals to really accomplish. So right now, understand the artificial intelligence playground, the actual ecosystem that is, and then move that and try to come into the missions and the capability of those missions.
But I'm guessing that, at this stage, even when they're in that more kind of checking it out, they need to start thinking about that foundation. So what are some of the factors that they need to address, kind of beginning with that infrastructure?
Mhm.
What goes into building that next generation AI technology stack?
So I think when you really look into the deployment, when you look into developing that artificial intelligence, it really comes into several different capabilities. They have to cultivate internally first. People, processes, technology, they really do need to work with their people and understand how they do their work. Because how they do their work is really how artificial intelligence is going to help them. And then it's infrastructure itself. So once they've chosen how they're going to quote unquote attack their individuals, how they're going to augment and help their individuals, it's going to be laying the foundations of this infrastructure. They need to follow the infrastructure. And then finally, they're going to have to go through and look at the data, because without that data, their infrastructure, their AI is not going to be able to be utilized and actually add value. The smarts of an AI is just like us. We bring experience, yes, but we bring knowledge. Artificial intelligence needs that data to provide the extra knowledge that, quite frankly, Steve Toomey, the employee, does not necessarily have right then and there in my head.
So what are some of the kind of key data management issues that agencies should be focusing on?
So I think the first step is going to be looking at the correct AI model. So the example that I've used in the past is that if I'm the IRS and I'm developing a help desk for an actual end user, for a US citizen to file their taxes, I don't necessarily want in any way, shape, or form a creative AI. In other words, a ChatGPT, while it's a beautiful, wonderful tool, hey, I need help on line 43. What should I enter? Having the AI come back with the word dog is not going to help anybody. It's creative, don't get me wrong, but that's not a helpful thing. I need an artificial intelligence that's going to provide the function and the outcome that I, as an agency, needed to have. So that's the first and foremost. It has to be the correct model. And then additionally, as we move forward, that same model that we're talking about here, that AI first stage help desk, does need access to the form information, how to fill out the forms, the instruction sets, but it may not need access to my personal information. In fact, it probably shouldn't have access to anybody's actual IRS information. That should be after I've asked my question, I didn't get an answer that I needed. Now I call the second level support, that individual who's using the internal AI that probably will have access to my individual tax return. So that person who validated that I am Steve Toomey will be able to come back and say, hey, Mr. Toomey, last year on line 43, you entered 1774, which was generated from this kind of data. That's where the AI becomes important. The model, and then the distinction of where to put and how to access the data for that model.
All right, so what are some other factors that agencies should kind of consider as they move towards enterprise AI?
So as I've hinted on already, people, process, and technology. And so as we look at IT, these things, these three key areas really have to be front and foremost on the AI model engineer's mind. Who are they doing? So I need to be able to examine multiple AI models. This is the first area that SHI, Dell Technologies can truly help our customers. Getting their data scientists, getting these exploratory AI engineers the correct workstation so that they can test out individual models. They need to be able to construct that model locally and see if it can do what they need it to do. Once that happens, now we can start developing the processes for that AI. We can start looking and scaling. Again, infrastructure follows the model selection. The data scientist engineer looks at several different models, picks one or two, but now they need to scale that model. They need to be able to go to their manager and say, hey, I've built this artificial intelligence that I truly believe is going to provide value. Their manager is going to need to be able to see it in context. They're going to be able to see what type of output. How is this going to help John over in finance or Jane over in human resources do their fundamental job easier, quicker, more efficient? And then finally, we really need to sit down and look at the artificial intelligence in the running of that new trained model. We have to be able to train it and then run the actual training, which is sometimes much more difficult than just running the base.
Thanks so much, Stephen and John. I really appreciate you breaking down the correlation between AI and the workforce for me. Thanks so much for our great speakers. They certainly gave us a lot to think about. A few quick reminders before we head into our next session. First things first, you can find this session on demand in the conference hall in about a half hour. We'll also be emailing you a link to the entire virtual summit tomorrow, so you'll be able to access all the sessions again, as well as the related resources. Our goal with these sessions is to provide you with the tools you need to help you do your job better, but you're not going anywhere because the great content, well, it's not over just yet. Hour 2 starts in just a few minutes. In the meantime, you can download resources from the Resource Center in the main environment, and I'll see you over in the next session. Bye for now.